Theology. I bought a bunch of books recently. We're rebuilding our library. We kept a lot of the good stuff we had, but having moved house several times, we just want to bulk up the library again. But there's also the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I'll get to the ugly later. We've got Charles Spurgeon, Day by Day. And this is fantastic because you've got, one reading per day. So he basically goes from one verse and then expands on it. Now, if you're not used to expositional preaching, if you're not used to this kind of line by line scriptural teaching, this is great because it'll show you just exactly how much information God has condensed in his word when a pastor can bring out all the meaning of just one verse of maybe, 6 words or something. This is really great. Get into expositional preaching. Spurgeon's obviously a fantastic preacher, and these day by day type books. There's another one we've got, Strengthen My Spirit, another Spurgeon, and it's a similar thing with particular themes. Lightly edited, that one says, so hopefully that's true to what Spurgeon wrote. So you've always got to be careful, make sure that when things are edited they're decent and true. So these are really good. I read one of them with the kids and the family, and one of them with my wife. I picked up another one. This is Richard D. Phillips. Now, I'd never heard of him as an author. However, Ligonier Ministries, if you can see, are an excellent ministry. So I'd recommend pretty much anything you can get from them. This is R.C. Sproul's ministry. He passed away in 2017, I believe. Presbyterian-based theology, but it's absolutely excellent. And this one, Masculine Mandate, is as it sounds like, it's a book particularly for men, to basically help give them guidance. Now, given the first chapter starts with a reference to Wild at Heart by John Eldridge. Now, I had read that in my 20s and took it as gospel, as it were. As you read a book and you think this is really appealing. I actually recommended that book to others, but I didn't have any ability to critically think about what I was reading. He covers that, and the first note surprised me because it's been ages since I thought about that book, and you'll see that in thrift stores everywhere actually, along with Rick Warren's Purpose-Driven Life. It's one of the classics that's always just out there. Christians seem to buy this stuff. Anyway, this one you won't see so frequently, but with Wild at Heart, which he addressed, was very interesting because, of course, at the outset of that book, if you've read it, the author suggests that because Scripture says Adam was placed in the garden, it meant therefore he was created outside of the garden in the wilderness or in the wilds, and therefore his base nature is wild, and then he's put into the garden and it's all very domesticated, and him being a real man, he's wild at heart, right? And so throughout that book, the author encourages men to go on these wild adventures or whatever, but it misunderstands God's purposes and God's building or creation of Adam to rule and subdue the earth and bring order to it, and rather put in I want to say a pagan mindset, certainly not a biblical idea of men supposed to be wild at heart. Now, we are wild at heart. I give a good sort of contrast to that would be C.S. Lewis in That Hideous Strength. If you look at the character, they've got a bear in there called Mr. Bultitude. Now, Mr. Bultitude is just a sort of an additional character who just sort of displays some crazy babe. He's this tame bear, a wild bear that's been tamed and is living in this house and getting up to antics. But actually, the name Mr. Bultitude was a bear that C.S. Lewis had saw. He went to see, I think it's Whipsnade Zoo. The story is that he became a Christian on the way there. Now, the story That Hideous Strength doesn't per se directly relate to this, but this was about Lewis's salvation. And I think in the story, he's relating to the bear, this bear that was once wild and uncontrollable, receiving the gospel, being converted, and becoming domesticated appropriately. Now, part of my channel is looking at how mainstream church and evangelicals have feminized men and made a very effeminate kind of church experience for men and the niceness of men. Now, C.S. Lewis is not an advocate of that kind of Christianity. In fact, quite the opposite. And his commentary on men without chests and how cowardly men can be. And certainly we live in the fulfillment of that appalling vision of cowardly men in this world now who will not stand up for truth. And I'm going to come back to that because of last week's news about Charlie Kirk. That's a really important element to life for men to consider: courage. And so there we go, the masculine mandate. I've only got to maybe chapter 3. I'm not a fantastic, like, it looks like I'm throwing books, like, and I'm reading these like crazy. I'm a slow reader. I pick up books, I put them down. It's not, highly recommend you dip into them. One of the reasons I've got these daily readings is because it's easy for you to just pick up. Now, you know, and if with this one, Spurgeon is going through day by day chapters of scripture, so you can get a lot of good in context teaching. So that's those 3. Here comes the shocker, right? I don't even know if I've got what it takes to read this thing or look at it. I won't read it through because it's going to waste my time. But here we go. Yeah, it's Brian Houston, and I just picked it up and I thought, I don't really know what this guy could even write. Like, what would he say? I don't know yet what is, you know, I know the theology with Hillsong is supposed to be pretty shallow. And there's been obviously huge controversy with this, you know, and I think they've been taken down a bit. However, nevertheless, they printed this stuff. Here we go. We've got recommendations by people like Rick Warren, Joyce Meyer, okay, T.D. Jakes and Joseph Prince. I mean, these are the usual suspects, aren't they? So yeah, I'm going to look into that and we'll see exactly what kind of theological stance he takes on things. You know, for a worldly church, I imagine this is going to be a very, should we say, positive message. Just it won't be training, it won't be discipling, it will be a kind of positive philosophy, right? Not a Christian philosophy. That's not to say Christianity is a negative religion. It is not, but it is realistic. We are the problem. God is not. These will generally tell you, look at this: live, love, lead. Okay, well, we'll get to that at some point maybe. But thank you for listening, and I'll be commenting on these books if there's really useful stuff, particularly the masculine mandate, which is at the moment it's talking about work and men in work and how God has made us to enjoy work, and the issues of laziness, and the issues of overwork, and the issues of, you know, it's falling on 2 sides of that ditch, and we need training and understanding. We all have a different tendency in life, so as men we need some scriptural guidance, and good authors, good Christian authors will do this. They won't bring you new theology and new ideas. They will expound on scripture, and they will tell you what God, and they will clear, you know, because we grow up and we learn faulty things all the time. And we need to think with the mind of Christ as we grow, right? So as Paul exhorts us to renew our minds, we need to do that. And good Christian authors will help us do that, and they will bring you examples and explain to you in well-taught words exactly what scripture is saying, not what they are saying, not what their agenda is, but what does scripture say about these issues. So look for books that do that, and don't twist scripture for their own ends and their own agendas. But thank you for listening.